Welcome to the Israel Answers series, connecting Israel, the Bible, and you. Join Susan Michael as she explores timely issues and current events from a scriptural perspective to equip the Christian world with a balanced and biblical response. Be sure to subscribe for future episodes, which will ignite your faith and bring the Bible to life in your everyday world. Now, let's join Susan with your Israel Answers.
Well, welcome to the Out of Zion podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Susan Michael, and I am here with a new friend and colleague, Doron Keidar, who is a member of the Israeli Defense Forces Special Forces. And so we're going to talk today a little bit about his unique role there with the IDF and a few of the projects that he's working on. So Doron, thank you for being with us today. And first, I'd really like you just to tell a little bit about your background, how you grew up, how you ended up in the Special Forces, and that formed who you are.
Yeah. Well, the short story of it is that my father was a World War II vet that fought World War II. He became a U.S. contractor in Israel, and actually that's how my family and I ended up in Israel. The rest of my family are from the United States. So we were born and raised in Israel. I grew up in northern Israel, in Upper Galilee, bordering Lebanon. And I grew up under conflict. I grew up, unlike most Israelis, kind of like today the conflict is in Gaza and the surrounding Gaza envelope. But we were the Gaza envelope of the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, with constant rocket attacks from Lebanon. And so that was my upbringing, is being raised in conflict. And that, I would say, is kind of what led me into being a defender, wanting to go fight back the enemy that's constantly taking advantage of the people, the Israelis on the other side here that are constantly being bombarded by terror attacks. And it was my pursuit to end up in the Israeli Special Forces. I started actually in the Southern Command in my service in 2003 and have been fighting in most of Israel's wars since 2003. Including the current war in 2017 is actually when I transitioned into Special Forces. I didn't start there, and I got into a Special Mobility Unit. And this is actually the game changer in this current war, which we had lacking in 2006. So one of the important game changers and strategies that was learned from the Second Lebanon War is what we actually got to contribute to this current war. And this is one of the biggest game changes, actually.
Meaning the mobility.
The special mobility units, yeah.
Can you elaborate what that is?
Simply put, so in 2006, you had soldiers behind enemy lines for, let's say, 3 days, and they're already losing water, food, their ammunition is depleting, wounded soldiers behind enemy lines. They basically were in a standstill and in a very, very desperate and dire situation because the logistics of getting resupplies, getting soldiers out of harm's way and getting them to a medical evacuation from the hot zone was too dangerous and not possible because we weren't set up for that yet in the military. So my commander was one of the leaders in standing up the response to that and creating special mobility teams that can do medical services, they can do resupply services, troop movements, etc. So that's essentially what I ended up being taking part of in 2017 and had the privilege of doing that active in this current war in the past 2 years now.
You said your father was from the United States.
Yes, ma'am.
And he wasn't Jewish? Jewish?
No. So he was a Christian Zionist, actually.
And your mother?
My mother was Catholic, actually. Yes, ma'am.
Israeli?
No.
Oh, but
so both sides of my parents came from Christian background.
Okay.
My dad was a lover of Zion, lover of Israel. My mom grew up in a Catholic home, not so much. So she came to Israel with my dad, agreed to go with him. And it was really his love for Israel that drew them as a couple.
So you were raised in a Christian home.
Correct.
But you're Israeli because
Yes,
you
ma'am.
were born in Israel.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, you just talked about your fighting in the recent Gaza war, but you were able to really see with your eyes and understand that Israel was not committing genocide. But yet, this is just such a common accusation against Israel that they're committing genocide. Can you kind of unpack that for us?
Yeah.
Why are they being accused of that? And what was really the situation?
So the sad reality is that, many Christians around the world said never again concerning the Holocaust. We'll never stand idly by when Jewish people come under attack by demonic forces, just to call it that, right? In a broad stroke. I'm not going to name names of movements, organizations, Islamic terrorists, or the far right or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's all demonic, in my opinion. Demonic forces coming against God's chosen people. And the church said we wouldn't do that again, especially the Protestants, right? And here we are in my lifetime. I thought I would never witness a repeat of history where the church has stood by silently. Many Christians actually condemned Israel when we retaliated against the terrorists and went to go get our hostages. Really, I mean, that's the missions. That was the main reason why myself and all the other soldiers were deployed, was to get our hostages. Number one.
That's
Number two, restore peace and security for our country and disarm Hamas in the process of doing so that we don't end up in a repeat of where the terrorists have that military capability to attack us like they did on October 7. And I think what people don't understand is October 7 wasn't a Bondi attack. It wasn't a terror attack on a bunch of innocent people at a nature festival party. It was an invasion. We had 7,000 terrorists that invaded Israel from Gaza, from multiple breaching points of the Gaza border into Israel, spreading murder, terror, and all sorts of evil.
And half of them, or what percentage, were civilians?
And about half were civilians. That's right. Half of them were not trained. They didn't have a mission plan like the other terrorists did. They had names of people, of where they lived, how many kids, do they have a dog, do they have a gun, etc. So very detailed missions that the Nukhba terrorists had, and so on. But yeah, half of those were just regular civilians of Gaza who carried out these murders and atrocities. And so, crazily enough, when we retaliated to this evil to defend ourselves, literally defend ourselves, I left my wife and kids at home defenseless to go fight on October 7. So if the terrorists ended up at my house, I would have been one of those victims of October 7, unfortunately, because I'm fighting to defend my country collectively. The reason why we got accused of war crimes, because that is the tactics of terrorists. And the sad truth is, like I said here earlier, that the church, by and large, has been silent or indifferent, contrary to what Bonhoeffer warned the church of. And then many others who claim to be Christians use and not. I mean, let's be real. Tucker Carlson is not a real Christian. I mean, just to use a name of one of the pundits who is claiming on the name of Christianity to oppose Israel and to condemn Israel. And I was at Amfest where he spoke, and I heard him that night claiming that we committed war crimes. The very next morning, I had an open mic with Generation Zion, by the way, great organization that's combating the misinformation war from the Christian world. And they graciously gave me 30 minutes to be there to answer questions to anybody who came up to the mic and wanted to ask of war crimes or whatever. And I opened up saying, Tucker Carlson last night lied, and I'll tell you why. So it's not an attack against him, and it's not an attack against those who are taking the side. What it really is, it's a battle for truth. And we need to be aware that what people have done is they have fallen for what's known as Dawah. Dawah is an Islamic tactic. Some of you have known of taqiyya. You've heard, you can be lied to in the name of Islam. But Dawah is actually the disinformation war. It's the propaganda war that is basically the silent jihad to be able to achieve their goals of the caliphate.
Domination.
And so they're using useful idiots like Tucker and friends. And that's what you're becoming. You're becoming a useful idiots of these terrorists who are feeding you misinformation. you take it for granted because where do they get the information from? Because that's the question people need to be asking. And really where it comes from is Qatar. Qatar are the number one funders of the disinformation war who fund and stood up Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera is the main source of information that all news networks in the world, when reporting on the Middle East and specifically Israel, glean their information from. They don't get it from reporters on the ground in Israel. I've seen the reporters. I've done security for many of the big names. I won't say who my clients were, but I've done it because I've done executive protection for many years. And many of them have been my clients where I stand there next to them as they're bold-faced lying to their audience and giving this information because they're not in the field, really. They're not gleaning the information for real. They are just regurgitating what Al Jazeera tells them. So that is why, because people can say, well, Doron, you're just, you're saying one thing, but everyone else is saying the other thing. So why should we believe you? And yeah, it's a hard leg to stand on, so to speak, right? Because the whole weight of all the international news agencies are typically saying something completely different. But that's the why. They're playing into Dawah. They're playing into the Islamic tactics and extremists. They're very well funded with the disinformation war. And that is why the world has been claiming that we've been committing war crimes. When the truth and the reality is, we are held to the Geneva Code, land warfare laws that every military in the West is held to. More than that, we have what's known as the gun purity laws. And that's what every soldier gets. It's 10 bullet points of you can't use your weapon to exercise your will. You can't use your weapon to make people do, you go over there, you do this. You're not allowed to do that. The weapon is for defense. The weapon is to use against terrorists only when fired upon and so on. So we actually have a higher standard than actually the international community for the United States or Europe or England or any other countries that have been fighting in Afghanistan or Iraq.
And all of this is in writing. So anyone that wants to research this or really find out, it's very clear. It's a part of written policies of the IDF.
If you Google the spirit of the IDF, that's where you have it in English. But we call it Torah Neshek, so directly translated as gun purity laws. But it's actually published by the IDF in English called The Spirit of the IDF, and you can Google it. That's right.
The other thing about the IDF is, of course, that say you have a soldier that violates the gun purity law, or you have a soldier that just one day just cracks and starts doing crazy things, and maybe they beat a Palestinian or something. The difference is that Israel will investigate and will take action against that soldier if they've done something wrong, as opposed to the other side, it's all about doing the wrong. It's all about the, attacking and violating. They have no code like that.
Correct.
And,
correct.
But yeah, Israel's not perfect. The IDF isn't perfect. Someone may make a mistake or someone may just lose it one day and do the wrong thing. Yes. But Israel will investigate and they will, they'll, come up with charges against that soldier.
I'll give you an example to that point. First of all, yes, we do have soldiers that act out of conduct. They do wrong, and they do get the full ramifications of military tribunal, etc. And they're very strict, extremely strict. And there have been soldiers that have been punished for not acting according to our code of conduct, 100%. And that happens. So I'm not going to whitewash and say the IDF is clean. We don't do wrong. No military has bad actors within a war, especially because in war you put under extreme pressures and challenges that you're not in everyday life. Somebody cutting you off on the highway and you have road rage. We're not talking about that. I'll give you an example. We had a terrorist that was under our custody that had been interrogated in the field and confessed to what they found on him. So they found on him a lock of hair of a young girl. And they pressed him, asked him, what is this? Where'd you get it? Why you have it? Why are you carrying a lock of hair on you? And so on. He finally confessed and said, this is the hair of a young girl that he had raped, this Jewish girl that he had raped and murdered, and he kept it as a memento. Now, mind you, we had seen the horrors of October 7. We knew what they did to family members, friends of ours, people we knew personally, and you're standing across this gentleman, and you're in the field. And I have a choice. I have a moral choice. Do I put him in the ground and chalk it up as, a casualty of war? Or do I act in godly conduct, actually, right? Because to me, at the end of the day, as a God-fearer, God is watching everything we do. So I don't care what the government say, what my military says. Right. I'm holding myself accountable to God's watching me right now and my heart and how I act in this very challenging moment. And that's just an example. Or you'll have some doctor at the hospital on post October 7th, hours later, a terrorist is on their table, and they know that this terrorist, because they got a text, your son was killed in the terror attack on October 7th just now. But they're at the hospital and they need to save lives. They can't check out and say, well, I need to go mourn. So they're operating. This was real reality. It happened. And they now have a terrorist on the operating table because we follow what's known as triage. Even in the battlefield of a terror attack, the triage is if the terrorist is mortally wounded and worse than the others, we have to treat them and prioritize them. That's what the Israeli, what's known as the Magen David Adom, that's what they have to prioritize. And those are real challenges that we faced. So all I'm saying is, quit looking at headlines, quit looking at inflammatory language that some pundits are saying, and realize there's a real people with real challenges. I'm one of them. And I can tell you that we have been put up against some of the hardest moral, ethical, and psychological challenges that I can imagine and think of. Because again, I have friends who are in special forces in America and in Europe and are Marines or Army. And I don't know anybody who's been put up against such immense challenges. And they're telling me this and saying, brother, I feel so bad for what you guys had to face. So I'm just basing off of that and saying, listen, this is a huge challenge for Israel. And I believe that we have been acting rightly and in flying colors, with all due respect to everybody's criticism.
Well, I want to ask about one other accusation. So Tucker Carlson also interviewed this former, the U.S. military. You can clarify who he was.
Yes.
And he had been hired by a contractor to go and to help secure the sites where they were distributing aid, where the Humanitarian Aid Fund was distributing aid.
Yeah.
And he came back with the most awful accusations against Israeli soldiers, that they were firing indiscriminately into the crowd and that they had killed this little hungry boy that he showed the picture of him. Tell us, what's the truth?
Well, I'm glad you asked about Anthony Aguilar is his name. He was a West Pointer, U.S. military, Army. Ended up finishing his service in the Green Berets. And unfortunately, this is one of those bad apples within the U.S. military. And again, it doesn't look good having an Israeli soldier calling out an American soldier. And in fact, I don't do that because I believe it's important with our ties with the United States and Israel that we strengthen each other and we don't show each other's dirty laundry, so to speak, because that's counterproductive, right? Because I'll find someone who did wrong in your military, you'll find someone done wrong in my military. It's counterproductive. Right. It exists, so we know that, and I know that there'll be due justice to that individual. But in this case, it became a public issue when he went to the media, and when he went and spread misinformation. So soldiers reached out to me from the IDF, because I'm not a part of any of the security forces for the GHF food distribution sites that you mentioned that I have seen. I have seen them. I'm aware of them. We operated in vicinity of, but not part of that mission. Mm-hmm. But soldiers who were part of the mission gave me personal accounts, and I cross-examined them, just to be clear. I did just say, oh, you're just some random guy, cross-examine, where did you serve, etc., what unit, and we're able to go, okay, so you're legit. So tell me about your experience, what you saw, what you witnessed, and then also knowing from operations I've been a part of and so on. And they said, look, he claimed that we fired into a crowd. Common sense. How much footage that we see of atrocities happening in Gaza that has gone viral? How hard would it have been for one of the Palestinians in the crowd that had been fired at, and knowing that they use misinformation as a tactic, how much more valuable would it be to capture footage of the IDF firing tank rounds into a crowd and just that carnage and the horror of those shots?
Yeah.
It would have shook the world.
Yeah.
All eyes on Rafah, right?
Right.
And that was based off of fictitious information, fabricated footage and so on of starving people and so on. How valuable would this be? And nobody in the crowd filmed it. None of the propagandists, which I guarantee you they're there. They're always there to capture any mistake that we make. And they didn't capture it on film. I found that to be very interesting. So we didn't have that. We didn't have, we have soldiers telling us that's not what happened. And we got to, through a fellow friend of mine who's, his name's Matthew Tardio. So this is all verified. You can go on his Twitter account and you can see the feed. He gave all the information because then he looked and did a deep dive on this. He's a former Green Beret, this Matthew Tardio. And as a Green Beret himself, he's like, well, he's part of my community. I got to fact check this. And he was able to get to the bottom of the fact that he was lying about the GHF. He was lying about what he did there. And the young boy that he claimed that he took a picture of and said this boy was shot and killed, then later Fox News were able to track him and say, here he is and his mother, and he's alive and well. So you had so much disproving of this man, yet he still goes on interviews. He still gets platformed, and you won't see me being platformed as the person who got insider account to disprove him, or Matthew Tardio, who's a fellow U.S. military member and an actual, I would say an actual Green Beret, because a real Green Beret liberates the free, the oppressed, and fights for real causes and has a moral backbone. And it's important that for myself and any military member, it doesn't matter if special forces or even a supportive, anyone who's in military and in uniform, you represent your country. You represent, that's on your weight of your shoulders. And to lie to the public using your title or using your background to say, well, because I'm this, that is a huge red flag for our community. I say it's our community because the United States and Israel have fought together against terror for years, and we fight shoulder to shoulder to fight evil. And it is important that we fight this in a righteous way and not spread misinformation and hurt each other. And that's very important.
Well, thank you for setting the record straight. I know that a lot of our listeners have heard these various things.
Yeah.
And it's just hard for us to believe as American Christians that someone would just outright lie, but they do it all the time. And that's what we have to come to understand in this situation, their lies about Israel. They're just outright lies.
You know, some people are narcissists. So they just want airtime, right? They want their name out there. Some people want money. So honestly, I don't know. I don't know what the motive is, but what I can just tell you is that when you see somebody, like we said, that should be acting completely opposite and having a higher standard, plus being a West Pointer. My nephew, by the way, is a West Pointer.
Okay.
And he finished his military service in the Pentagon. So I'm very proud. I'm a very proud patriot of America, as I am a Zionist and Israeli. And so I can tell you is from firsthand, knowing what the standard is from my own family, it's a shame that people, for whatever reasons, spread misinformation, and it's wrong.
Well, now, Doron, you also have some projects that you've been working on, all in about getting out the truth and the right information. But share with us, you brought a couple of things with you. Share with us what you've been a part of.
So I've been honored to be a part of a wonderful film project called I Am Israel, the Mountain of the King. We've been working on this for, I'd say, over 5 years. Together with David Kern. He's a Christian film director from here in Nashville, locally. And we met each other years ago, and I saw him in his first film called I Am Israel. And I approached him. I said, brother, I said, that is so beautiful. You shared the beauty of Judea, Samaria, the biblical heartland, an area that is politically charged because of the media and what have you. And you showed it in a beautiful cinematic way and in a biblical way that basically shows this land the way God sees it. And I said, that was wonderful, because you took something that could have been negative, you could have gotten into the landmines of these political issues or whatever, but you didn't. You just told the personal story of these Jews that are building God's holy land and rebuilding it and restoring it, and what God's doing through these individuals, and telling their personal story. So then I told him about why don't you do a film about the Temple Mount with that same spirit, with that same vantage point of how God sees this beautiful holy mountain, which God says, this is the navel of the earth. This is where I will put my name forever. And then we were able to collaborate and make a sequel of I Am Israel, with the main focus being God's mountain, Mount Zion in Jerusalem. And it's a beautiful film. It's in 4K, high definition, beautiful cinematography, never seen before footage of Israel in one of the most beautiful cinematic ways. We got John Rhys Davies. He's the narrator of the film. He's known for the younger generation from Lord of the Rings, but he's also, for people like me, he's known from the Indiana Jones films. And so we have this wonderful A-lister film actor that is narrating the film. And we got an orchestra from here in Nashville, high-end music. Everything is just
So tell me,
top
how
notch.
can our audience find a copy of this? How can they get by it?
Well, this is what the cover looks like. It's the more colorful cover from the two films. And it's called I Am Israel, the Mountain of the King. And if you go to iamisraelfilm.com or just Google I Am Israel film, you will see this cover.
Right.
And you can download it digitally. You can get a hard copy like this and DVD or Blu-ray. And yeah, it's a wonderful experience. It's for families, so it's all ages. We did that on purpose. It's adventurous. It's exciting. It's the journey that the Israelites did from Mount Sinai through the land of Israel, and we take you through all these biblical sites and take you to the journey
Well, I
to
look
Mount
forward
Zion.
to seeing it myself.
Yes, ma'am.
And as we bring this to a close, you have another
Yes.
resource here you'd like to share.
So another important resource for the information war that we have seen since October 7, from the river to the sea, protests. I have this book by Lars Anderson. He's a world-renowned Bible teacher, and I've had the privilege to get his book and to share this with many people, because he has written the book to counter this Palestinian myth. Because there's not such a thing as a Palestinian people or Palestinian land. They're Arabs and they're Jews, and then all kinds of other people groups in the Middle East, and specifically in Israel, if it's Druze and whatnot. And so what he does is he basically gets through the myth and exposes it through the historic backdrop of where it come from, who propagated it, and
how do we get a copy of this book?
You just Google the name. You can Google the name, but you can also go to my website. All of these resources are there. Just Google my name, DoronKeidar.com, and I made sure to have that all on one landing page, so to speak, and you can get links to where you can purchase those.
Well, we'll put that URL in the today's show notes. So we just want to thank you. For more information on Doron and these two wonderful resources, we'll put the links in today's show notes. If your platform doesn't have show notes, please go to icejusa.org/show notes, and we will have these resources for you there. So Doron, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for listening in, and God bless. Hey, just give me one more minute. I want to offer you one of our free resources. We have wonderful resources in our show notes, and if you go to our website at icejusa.org/show notes, you'll find links for a number of our free offers. We have downloadables to help root you in Scripture, help you to understand the issues surrounding Israel and the importance of Christian support for Israel. And don't forget, please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and stay connected. Thank you, and God bless.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Out of Zion with Susan Michael. Be sure to subscribe to Out of Zion now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Pray.com, Salem One Place, Salem Life Audio. Out of Zion with Susan Michael is a production of ICEJ USA. All rights reserved.